Oh, I gave you a 5-word description of Romney, who, by the way, had a terrible economic record in Massachusetts. You know where we ranked in terms of job creation in Massachusetts under Romney? 47th in the country, 4th from the bottom. Deval Patrick has run rings around Romney when it comes to job creation. Unemployment in Massachusetts is now at 6.8%. It's not an accident. And he left the state's infrastructure an absolute wreck. I mean, you have no idea. Rusting bridges, pothole roads, couldn't get anything done. This guy's going to revive the economy. Now, what about Newt? I'll give you 3. Brilliant and nuts. And I didn't even touch his domestic situation. I mean, you know, I teach a lot of kids. By the way, and we're producing wonderful young people in this country, folks. George pointed out, we just heard from 2 of them here, and we spent all day yesterday. And I'm talking about kids everywhere. I'm in schools all over the place. And of course, I teach both at Northeastern and UCLA, so I'm teaching these youngsters. My California Policy Issues course this year, by the way, 60 kids at UCLA. 2/3 of them first-generation Americans, and they're fabulous. They're fabulous, and they want to get into politics and public life. Anyway, three-word description on, oh, I was talking about Gingrich. As you can see, I avoided his domestic thing. I mean, I don't know, is that relevant? I guess it is. But when I talk to these students of mine about getting into public service, and I urge them to do so and try to open up doors for internships and this kind of stuff, I say to them, now look, you got to understand, there are 2 rules here if you're going to go into public service, and of course I push them to do so. 1, plan to live moderately. I mean, if you want to make a lot of money, don't go into public service. But there are enormous personal satisfactions to being in public service and to being in a position where you can help to make a difference in the lives of your fellow citizens, which is basically why most of us go into it in the first place. So, plan to live moderately, and secondly, have a good but conventional sex life. I mean, if you're into the kinky stuff, good luck to you, but don't go into politics. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And what is it with these guys? I don't know. And it's completely bipartisan. Have you noticed? I mean, no partisan divide on this one. I mean, Gingrich, John Edwards, Weiner, Spitzer. Who's the guy from Nevada? The senator? I mean, and I don't get it. And then, you know, when this happens, folks, I was saying this last night, when this happens, we get these pop psychologists going on national television to explain to us, well, you see, these folks are kind of a different breed. And as they move up politically, they become more and more, well, they think they become invincible. Are you kidding? The higher you go up, the more exposed you are. I mean, this is madness. I couldn't wait to get home at night. I mean, I'm married to a beautiful woman. We have 3 wonderful kids. Now we got 8 grandkids. I mean, life is great, but anyway, plan to live moderately and watch your personal life.
We're going to do 2 more. Joe Vecchio has his hand up, and then we'll finish with Dan McAllister. Joe.
1988, I think, was the year the Fairness Doctrine was eliminated by President Reagan, and then along comes the Telecom Act of '95, which allowed a lot of media companies to combine. So I'd like you to maybe address what you think that's done to the media. And then on the economy side of it, we've had more deregulation on the financial banks, and we've got essentially 5 big banks worth over $2 trillion each. So if you'd like to address some or all, I would appreciate it.
Let me take the second one first, if I can, not to avoid the first one, because the first one's a little more ambiguous. Because as new technologies have developed, even with the kind of concentration that we've had in this kind of thing, we're also getting an interesting, much more expanded communication universe in which it looks as if lots of different points of views and stuff, and things are possible. Look, like most Americans, I believe in the free enterprise system. But there are some aspects of our economy, folks, where the market, left to its own devices, doesn't work. That's why most states have public utilities commissions, right? No state knows the importance of having a good public utilities commission more than the great state of California, which attempted to deregulate the production and distribution of electric energy to its great sorrow. The market does not work in healthcare. It just doesn't. Sorry, but we've got to regulate health costs. Every other one of these advanced industrialized countries even though they have systems that range from government ownership to complete privatization, regulate health costs. Because the market doesn't work in healthcare, for obvious reasons. And if history, Fatima Mathima, teaches us anything, it is that you've got to regulate financial institutions. How many times are we going to go through this? If Bill Clinton were here today, he'd say that signing the repeal of was his biggest mistake. Now, we have 145 state-regulated banks in Massachusetts, by the way. These are so-called community banks, usually with headquarters and maybe 7 or 8 branches. Every one of them is in excellent shape. But we wouldn't let them. Subprime loans? Are you kidding me? I said to somebody not too long ago, whoever came up with the phrase subprime loan must have also developed pre-owned cars. You know, I mean, we used to call them used cars, right? Now they're pre-owned. You've got to regulate these institutions. For one thing, you license them. We don't let anybody who wants to come down the pike and open up a bank do so, right? Because we're worried about the consequences of that. But not a single one of our banks, the Butler Bank in Lowell, got into some trouble, but it had nothing to do with its financial practices, which was lousy management. And by the way, and I did this several times when I was governor, bank gets into trouble, what happens if you're regulating? You take it over, you merge it with another one, and close it down. You know, on Friday it was the ABC Bank, and on Monday it's the XYZ Bank. I mean, we do that because this is so important to us. And I think the notion of deregulating and repealing Glass-Steagall and all this kind of stuff, we'll let the market work, was a disaster. Now, and I know good conservatives who agree with me. I mean, there are certain things that have to be regulated. Regulated thoughtfully, intelligently, sensitively. I mean, we've got to regulate health costs in Massachusetts, but the healthcare community is very important to us, folks. We have the best healthcare in the world. We're one of the great biotech centers in the world. It's not an accident. We got some of the best. I mean, there's more medical intelligence between Huntington Avenue and Brookline Avenue and Longwood Avenue and Brookline than any place in the world. And it's an enormous asset for us. But look, I know these folks. You know, they're friends of mine. They know the system is crazy. They'll tell you that. All they say is, look, please involve us. Let us be a part of it so you don't end up killing what is very good about Massachusetts healthcare. And it is very, very good, and it has great economic benefits as well. So I think this deregulation binge, which in some cases made sense. You know, why do we continue to regulate alcohol in my state? I don't know. You know, it's a throwback to Prohibition. And by the way, incidentally, in New Hampshire, all of you know, we have socialism in New Hampshire. You know where? Liquor. I mean, Vermont too? Interesting. And they make a ton of money on those state liquor stores. It's very interesting. Live free or die, but not when it comes to liquor. So I want to see us regulate appropriately and effectively where we should regulate and get the hell out of the way where we shouldn't. And that involves choices. But it shouldn't involve ignoring history. And I think what happened during that period was ignored the lessons of history.
Mr. McAllister, last question.
Could you reflect a little bit on the Occupy movement and what your thoughts are on any impact that might have on the presidential election this year? As they come out of the long winter and kind of reemerge in strong form?
Good question. I was frankly kind of surprised by the Occupy movement and the fact that it seemed to gain as much traction as it did, frankly. But it's difficult to sustain that over an extended period of time. And what we did at Northeastern University, by the way, at the time of the Occupy movement, was to decide we would have a teach-in on the economy. Remember the Vietnam War teach-ins? Which had a profound effect on what happened to American policy. And we had this all-day teach-in on a Sunday. 1,000 people showed up. We got prominent economists, this, that, and the other thing. And if you're interested, northeastern.edu/teach-in. It's all there for you. And my hope is that we can encourage young people in particular, who I think have a legitimate reason to gripe. Why? Because, you know, whatever you think of the Occupy movement, they're not lying around in tents. They and their parents are paying a hell of a lot of money to go to school, study, and prepare themselves for good careers. And I'd like to see teach-ins by the hundreds develop in universities all over the country, and invite the public in, not just the kids. And let's have a good discussion about this economic thing. What went wrong? How do you deal with it? What should we be doing going forward? And let's get the campuses working on this thing in a way that helps people to understand, get involved, this, that, and the other thing. I'd like to see that, because I think while the Occupy, I mean, the 99-1 thing is kind of interesting, and does illustrate the fact that we've got growing gaps now, income gaps, which are huge in this country, as all of you know, and I don't know if anyone thinks that those are good things, with the possible exception of Mitt. And anyway, we're waiting for his Cayman Island returns. See if we can figure out what that's all about. But quite frankly, you know, I think this was a failure of public policy on the part of Democrats as well as Republicans. I mean, we're all kind of getting into this deregulation stuff. And in the meantime, I'd like to see students and the communities generally using the campus as a way to expand this and educate in ways that I'm not sure the Occupy movement by itself has done. And we're going to try to do that at UCLA and try to kind of spread the word. But the Northeastern one that we did in November really is a good model, and it's all there on your computer for you. One of the best things that ever happened to us was a phone call from George asking me to come down and speak to the City Club. This is back in the late 90s on high-speed rail. And we did it on the front lawn of Larry Lucchino's modest cottage in La Jolla, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. I'd never met Larry Lucchino. And none of us, including himself, thought that he would ever have any connection with the Red Sox. And at the time, the Massachusetts legislature and my friend Weld, who succeeded me, who was supposedly a conservative, had passed legislation to tear down Fenway Park and replace it with a phony version of the same thing at a cost of $850 million, $300 million of which was going to be provided by the state of Massachusetts and city of Boston. Now, no reflection on what you're doing here, but Massachusetts has never put a nickel of the taxpayers' money into a professional sports franchise. Okay? And I thought that was a good thing, that we hadn't put any of the tax. We got a few other things to do with the taxpayers' money. So I was really furious, and there was this kind of ragtag group of citizens who called themselves Save Fenway, and everybody was kind of pushing them to one side. The entire establishment was for this new Fenway thing, including the sports press, who were getting a little broader and broader and complaining that the seats were too narrow. Isn't that interesting? I mean, they're okay in 1912, but they're too narrow. I said to one of our best Boston Globe reporters, I said, Bob, maybe it's you, not the seats. I mean, seats are fine for me. Anyway, well, you know, several years later, a new ownership group takes over the Red Sox. By the way, they've done a fabulous job, and Larry Lucchino is named as the new CEO. George called me. Larry Lucchino, he said, call him. Here's his cell phone. It's nice to have this guy, Vitrovich, around. You know? So I called him, said, congratulations, this, that, and the other thing. And I said, you know, I hope you'll take a good look, Larry, at this Fenway thing. I mean, I think it'd be a tragedy to lose that stadium. And to his credit, he and his partners brought his architect up from Baltimore, had done Camden Yard, Janet Marie Smith, who's terrific. She took one look at the place and said, wow, you know. Anyway, so when I said to Larry, I said, I hope you take a good look at it. He said, don't you remember what you said to me when you were speaking to the City Club at our house in La Jolla about Fenway? I said, we talked about Fenway? He said, yeah. I said, what did I say? He said, you said that anybody who was for tearing down Fenway should be criminally indicted. In the meantime, if you have any thoughts about any of the things that we've discussed today, m.dukakis@neu.edu. Shoot me an email and share your thoughts with me, and I'll do my best to respond. Thanks.
Oh, well.
Thank you.